Good morning, all of you. Welcome to Ansarkari. So, in this video, we'll be analyzing the important articles for the UPSC Civil Services examination. This is going to be for 19th of April 2023. So, here we start with the analysis. So, here, firstly, we see that yesterday also we had talked about this thing about the legalization of the same-sex marriages. So, Supreme Court to see if Special Marriage Act can be deemed gender neutral or not. So, जो Special Marriage Act already है, उसमें Supreme Court is trying to see कि whether it can be made gender neutral and not, and जो legalization of same sex marriages है वो इसी का component बना सकते हैं या नहीं. So, in the words of Chief Justice of India, there is no absolute concept of a man or an absolute concept of a woman at all. And a man or a woman is not a definition of what their genitals are. It is far more complex. And even when the Special Marriage Act says man and woman, the very notion of a man and a woman is not an absolute on what genitals you have. So, this is what he has said. And so basically यही scope check किया जाएगा कि whether this Special Marriage Act can be made gender neutral or not. So Supreme Court दूसरे केस में it is saying जो बिल्किस बानो वाला केस है, it said कि it's Bilkis today and it can be anybody tomorrow. So what were the standards you applied for the remission? This is what Justice Kim Joseph has asked the central government and the Gujarat, who refused to submit the files on the remission of the 11 convicts in the gang rape and the murder case. So जो convicts थे, they have been set free and मतलब they are now free, they are out of the prisons. So they जो sentence दिया गया था उनको, that was like remission कर दिया गया था by the center and the state government of Gujarat. So Supreme Court ने ये बोला है कि आपने क्या standards apply किए for the remission. And central and Gujarat government, they have refused to submit the files जो remission के regarding थी to the Supreme Court. So here we are seeing Supreme Court versus the Gujarat government. So 27 March ko Supreme Court directs the center and Gujarat to be ready with the relevant files regarding the grant of the remission to Bilkis Bano case convicts. And 18th of April, after seeking time to complete the pleadings and citing incomplete translation of the record, center and the Gujarat informed court that they are seeking review of the 27 March order. And यहाँ पे Justice Kim Joseph said कि are you saying that the state government has immunity from producing the documents in a court? क्योंकि अभी they have refused to provide with the files जो कि remission से related थी. So here he say कि क्या state government के पास immunity है from producing the documents in the court or not? And documents, they have been shown to us in even graver matters of national concern. So आप यहाँ पे ये reason दे के you can't say कि we will not provide you with the files. And if you cannot show the reasons, we will draw our own conclusions then. So agar the state government fails to provide with the relevant files to the Supreme Court, then Supreme Court is saying कि अगर आप हमें reasons नहीं बता पाओगे कि किस basis पे, किस grounds पे आपने remission दिया है to the 11 convicts, then Supreme Court will draw its own conclusions. So that's coming out very clearly from Supreme Court. So India and Russia, they agreed to deepen the trade and the economic relations. So India and Russia, they have discussed the trade deficit during recent Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Economic, Scientific, Technological and Cultural Cooperation. So trade deficit एक agenda था of discussion. Apart from that, the sides, they have reviewed the entire gamut of the bilateral trade and the economic relationship, and they have agreed to work together to unlock their full potential, including addressing the trade deficit and market access issues. So इस चीज पे ज्यादा focus है. एंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस हमने ये चीज भी पहले डिस्कस करी है, इसका मेंशन किया है कि फॉर इंडिया एक साइड यूएसए है या एक साइड वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड है एंड दूसरी साइड रशिया है. तो अभी तक के लिए वी हैव बीन लाइक बैलेंसिंग वेरी नाइसली बिटवीन दीज टू कंट्रीज. एंड मतलब आने वाले टाइम में लाइक प्रेशर इट इज ग्रोइंग ऑन इंडिया कि आपको एक साइड चूज करना इम्पोर्टेंट है. So on that, we are seeing कि Russia के साथ definitely हमारे good terms हैं, and we are trying to strengthen our relations, and the same goes for USA also. So thermal stress poses threat to sustainable livestock farming. So temperature it is increasing, उसकी वजह से जो sustainable livestock farming है, it has become a threat for that. And we are seeing it in the state of Kerala. वहाँ पे we are witnessing heat wave like conditions with soaring mercury and elusive summer rain. Livestock farmers, they are struggling to protect their animals against the thermal stress. So definitely for agricultural sector, the climate change, it is definitely a threat, not just for the livestock, but even for the crop cultivation also. So we have the Center for Animal Adaptation to Environment and Climate Change Studies, and it's like, so इस जो thermal stress की वजह से जो impact है उसको quantify करने के लिए this center, it is under the Kerala Veterinary and Animal Sciences University. They have started a project कि जो impact हो रहे हैं, we can quantify them. So ISRO, it plans to launch the Telios 2 on April 2022. So ISRO, it will be launching Singapore's Telios satellite from the Satish Dhawan Space Center, Sriharikota mein. And the launch, it will be carried out by the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle by PSLV. This launch will be the 55th mission of PSLV. And Telios, it's an Earth observation satellite, which is developed by ST Engineering. So Telios, the one, it was launched 2015 May, and this was the first Singapore commercial Earth observation satellite. And it is obviously, it will be used for the remote sensing applications also. Coming to the editorial section, so here, when we have a look at the important topics, so government must prepare the people to deal with the extreme weather events. So basically prepare करना, preparedness obviously बहुत important है. हमने बात की है कि कुछ ऐसे measures लेने चाहिए कि we are able to mitigate the impact, and then at the same time कुछ ऐसे measures लेना important है कि we adapt to the changes which are happening, so that we can like have a sustainable livelihood. तो हमारा जो lifestyle, obviously that needs to be changed when it comes to adapting to the impacts, to the changes, to the climate changes. So abhi recently Supreme Court के judgment आई थी in the media one case. So this was a news channel which is based in Chennai. So इससे regarding ये judgment थी कि अगर आपकी like government policies पे if you have critical views, तो उसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि you are anti government. So you have the freedom of having critical views on government policies. So this news channel, it was denied the license, citing some reasons कि it is a threat to the national security by the government. So इस केस में सुप्रीम कोर्ट it upheld this thing. So a judgment that upholds the constitution. So Supreme Court judgment in the Media One case, it requires a political reading and not merely a legal one. So it's a landmark judgment on the freedom of expression and a judicial fiat against the sealed cover malpractice. So Supreme Court ने support किया है कि जो basically sealed cover में जो information provide की जाती है वो नहीं होना चाहिए. सो सुप्रीम कोर्ट इज सेइंग कि ट्रांसपेरेंसी एंड अकाउंटेबिलिटी होना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. तो रिलाइंग ऑन दिस सील्ड कवर जूरिस्प्रूडेंस इज not like suggested or not recommended as per the Supreme Court, but कुछ exception like है जहाँ पे use कर सकते हो, but it should not become the common thing. And apart from that, जैसे कि अभी मैंने बोला कि if you have critical views against the government policies, तो that is not like anti-government नहीं है वो, तो it is basically referring to your fundamental right of freedom of expression, which is provided under Article 19, Part 3 of the Constitution. So it definitely endorses the citizens' right to question the state by distinguishing the government from the nation. So it is a judicial admonition against the misuse of the rhetoric of national security to cover up the state's arbitrariness. So जो central government है हमेशा reason ये दिया जाता है कि it is because national security के reason की वजह से हम लाइसेंस प्रोवाइड नहीं करेंगे मीडिया ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस को. सो एक ये लाइक जर्नलिज्म के लिए भी इट इज नॉट लाइक अगर हम फ्री फेयर जस्ट जर्नलिज्म की भी बात करें तो उसके लिए भी दिस वाज नॉट गुड. एंड बेसिकली दिस वाज हम बोल सकते हैं कि center was misusing the power it had. So judgment comes at a time when the center it is being criticized for its attempts to destabilize the institutions of democracy. So media definitely it is one of the pillars of democracy, and Supreme Court it too faces its share of criticism. So it has postponed hearings on important cases like electoral bonds and the dilution of Article 370. So कुछ blame Supreme Court के ऊपर भी डाला जा रहा है यहाँ पे. And it has also upheld the draconian provisions of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act and taken a stand against constitutionally guaranteed freedoms, such as by staying a Bombay High Court order directing the release of physically challenged activist G.N. Sai Baba. So कुछ चीजें like Supreme Court ने भी ऐसी की है. So author is highlighting them also, which are not appreciated, and an attempt to regain the glory. So yeah, the apex court it has tried to regain its glory. So in the Anup Baranwal versus Union of India, it took away the power of the appointment of the election commissioners from the sole domain of the executive and directed the constitution of a committee which would be comprising Chief Justice of India, the Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition to select the election commissioners. So यहाँ पे एग्जीक्यूटिव के पास थी सारी पावर व्हेन इट कम्स टू द अपॉइंटमेंट ऑफ द चीफ इलेक्शन कमिश्नर एंड द इलेक्शन कमिश्नर्स. सो दैट हैज बीन टेकन अवे सो दैट जो ट्रांसपेरेंसी है एंड जो न्यूट्रलिटी है फेयरनेस है that is maintained, and sari like power concentration should not be in the hands of the central government because that leads to then arbitrariness. And on those lines Supreme Court ने recommend किया है कि एक committee बनानी चाहिए जिसमें 3 members would be there that would comprise Chief Justice of India, Prime Minister and Leader of Opposition, जो कि select करेंगे out of a group of names the Chief Election Commissioner, so that जो Election Commission of India है उसकी autonomy and independence बनी रहे. क्योंकि अगर गवर्नमेंट वुड बी अपॉइंटिंग द चीफ इलेक्शन कमिश्नर ऑब्वियसली वो कुछ ना कुछ बायस रहता है फिर भी व्हेन इट कम्स टू इट्स फंक्शनिंग. सो फॉर दैट there was this recent judgment of Anup Baranwal versus Union of India. So this Media One judgment, it has underlined the institutional capacity of the court in troubled political times. So there was this Bomai case. It was decided in 1994, holding that federalism and secularism, they are the basic features of the constitution. And the real dispute in the case of this Bomai case, it was the correctness of the dissolution of few state governments. So that did not even survive for consideration as elections were held in those states subsequently. So SR Bomai case जो है उसमें basically यही है कि जो कुछ स्टेट असेंबलीज थी जिनको डिसॉल्व कर दिया गया था। सो उससे रिगार्डिंग ये केस हुआ एंड इसमें सुप्रीम कोर्ट अपहेल्ड कि फेडरलिज्म एंड सेक्युलरिज्म दे आर द बेसिक फीचर्स ऑफ द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन। एंड केस ये था कि जो चीफ मिनिस्टर थे ही वाज आउट ऑन अ फॉरेन विजिट एंड उनके पीछे से द स्टेट असेंबली वाज डिसॉल्व्ड। सो ऑब्वियसली इट इज इम्पोर्टेंट कि आप जो गवर्नमेंट जो इनकम्बेंट गवर्नमेंट है आप उसको एक चांस दोगे ऑफ proving their majority via the no confidence motion. So that is important. So federalism and secularism, they are the basic features of the constitution. Then we had the Puttaswamy case, जिसमें challenging the Aadhaar project was decided in 2017. So Supreme Court only expounded the idea of privacy and related concepts at the doctrinal level without a direct and immediate encounter with the executive, which by that time had completed the project only. So on the other hand, in Media One case, the court directly confronted the center, जहाँ पे it unilaterally cancelled the license issued to the television channel citing national security. So यहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट ने unilaterally ही decide किया था कि the license of this news channel Media One would be cancelled क्योंकि reason was national security and it directed it to renew the license. So it considered all the major doctrinal issues like the right to fair hearing, proportionality standard, and public interest claims and issued directives to the center in concrete terms. So different doctrines use की गई इस judgment में. These are the three ones जो अभी मैंने just mention करी है. And so obviously सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बोला कि आप हर बार ये रीजन या इस रीजन को हमेशा यूज नहीं कर सकते हो कि इन द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ नेशनल सिक्योरिटी यू हैव कैंसल द लाइसेंस एंड लाइकवाइज आप डिसीजंस नहीं ले सकते हो. So this was the judgment in this case. So इस आर्टिकल के थ्रू हमने कुछ important judgments सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने recent times में जो दी हैं we just like revisited them. So pessimism, it continues to decline, though not as rapidly as before. So जो मतलब आने वाले टाइम के लिए इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ के लिए चाहे आप एक्सपेक्टेशंस ले लो, इन्फ्लेशन के लिए ले लो, आपकी इनकम ग्रोथ के लिए ले लो, कंजम्पशन एक्सपेंडिचर के लिए ले लो, तो जो पेसिमिज्म है वो डिक्लाइन हो रहा है बट इतनी स्पीड से डिक्लाइन नहीं हो रहा है जैसे वो पहले हो रहा था. सो क्लोज टू 52% of the urban consumers, they have felt that the economic situation, it has worsened. So 52% of the urban consumers का मानना ये है कि economic situation पहले से और खराब हो गई है, which is the lowest share since the pandemic outbreak. So अगर हम रिकवरी को देखें and we try to understand क्या ट्रेंड रहा है, किस चीज मतलब कौन सा फैक्टर किस तरीके से रिकवर किया है, तो let's understand that with the help of these data and the charts. So this data is it is from the RBI's consumer confidence survey and फ्रॉम दी ऑर्डर्स जो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग फर्म्स ने रिसीव किए हैं, क्या उनकी वॉल्यूम इंक्रीज हुई है, क्या नंबर ऑफ ऑर्डर्स इंक्रीज हुए हैं, देन टर्नओवर ऑफ द सर्विसेज एंड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर सेक्टर्स एंड डिमांड फॉर लोन. सो उसके बेसिस पे ये सारा डेटा है. सो चार्ट 1 इट इज शोइंग कि the results of the RBI's consumer confidence survey, which was conducted across 19 major cities between 2nd March and 11th of March this year. So first is the respondents who said कि economic situation it has worsened. हमने देखा 52% के around है and ये कम हो रहा है with time, so that is positive thing. But still 50% को लगता है कि economic situation पहले से खराब है. So that is there. Second is respondents जिन्होंने बोला कि employment scenario it has worsened. So that is also close to 50%, around 48% लोगों का मानना ये है कि employment scenario भी पहले से खराब हो रहा है. And then another set said कि जो income levels है they have decreased. So 28% लोगों का मानना ये है कि पहले से जो उनकी इनकम थी वो अब कम हो गई है. And then respondents who said कि price levels increase हुए हैं. So 93.8% of the respondents का मानना ये है कि price level पहले से increase हुए हैं. That's true also. Inflation high level पे चल रही है, but recently we have seen कि wholesale inflation and retail inflation दोनों कम हो रहे हैं. Then यहाँ पे this chart is regarding the new orders received by the manufacturing firms and यहाँ पे red one is the red graph is showing the share of the firms which said कि new orders they have increased in percentage form. So 37.2% of the firms ऐसी हैं जिन्होंने ये बोला है कि उनके number of orders increase हुए हैं with time. And next, services and infrastructure sector में we have seen कि infrastructure sector का turnover increase हो रहा है 48.7%. Service sector turnover भी increase हो रहा है, that is also around 48-49%. And lastly, the response of the assessment of the loan demand among the various sectors according to RBI's bank lending survey. So loan demand कैसी चल रही है? Agricultural sector में lowest है, services में decline हो रही है, but highest अगर हम सब sectors में देखें तो loan demand सबसे ज़्यादा highest services sector में है. Then infrastructure के लिए we have the data, manufacturing के लिए है, retail के लिए है. So services के बाद we have retail. उसके बाद we have infrastructural and lastly agriculture. So this is the chronology also. So China में GDP growth के numbers release हुए हैं for the first quarter. So जो consumption है that is the main reason जिसकी वजह से we are seeing कि China में GDP growth improve हुई है. So that is positive even for the globally अगर हम impact देखें. So it's a positive development. So Nagaland में election से regarding कुछ issue चल रहे हैं. So how is Nagaland caught between the Supreme Court and the community-based organizations on reservation of seats to women in the local body elections? एक ये issue है. And what is the special provisions जो Article 371A grant करता है to the state of Nagaland? And has a local body election ever taken place in Nagaland or not is also another thing that we'll be understanding through this article. So 28th March को नागालैंड गवर्नमेंट जो चीफ मिनिस्टर जो नागालैंड करंट गवर्नमेंट है they preferred to be in contempt of the Supreme Court than face the wrath of the community based organizations by repealing the Nagaland Municipal Act of 2001. So गवर्नमेंट प्रेफर करती है कि हम सुप्रीम कोर्ट की जो ruling है या we will be like it would be okay या we accept कि if we contempt Supreme Court rather than being against the community based organizations. So they have repealed the Nagaland Municipal Act of 2001. So this led to the cancellation of the State Election Commission's 9th March का जो notification था for holding elections to Nagaland's 39 urban local bodies जिसमें 33% of the seats they were reserved for women. So since Nagaland Municipal Act को abolish कर दिया गया तो जो notification issue किया गया था by the State Election Commission. So ये एक important fact ये है that we need to keep in mind कि जो local body elections है वो State Election Commission के द्वारा किए जाते हैं and not by ECI. So since ये act repeal कर दिया गया तो जो notification अभी issue किया गया था by the State Election Commission to hold elections for the urban local bodies अब उसका भी कोई मतलब कोई एसेंस नहीं बचा. तो the apex court it has however stayed the notification cancelling the civic body polls. So apex court ने ये इस चीज को इसके ऊपर stay लगाया है but it was in this year for the first time कि Nagaland it elected 2 women to power in the recent assembly election. So एक ये achievement भी थी कि for the first time in Nagaland's history पहली बार women they were elected as MLAs. So अब ये समझते हैं कि रीजन क्या है for this opposition to the urban local body elections. So Nagaland it is arguably the only state जहाँ पे urban local body seats they are not reserved for women as which is mandated by clause 4 of the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act of the Constitution. So as per this 74th Amendment of the Constitution, रिजर्वेशन ऑफ सीट्स फॉर वुमेन एक मैंडेटरी एलिमेंट है बट नागालैंड ही एक ऐसी स्टेट है जहाँ पे वुमेन के लिए सीट्स दे आर नॉट रिजर्व्ड इन दी local bodies. But most of the traditional tribal and urban organizations they are opposing this 33% reservation of seats for women as they argue कि such reservation would violate the special provisions जो article 371A grant करता है to the नागालैंड स्टेट. सो ये मेन कंटेंशन है कि जो ट्राइबल कम्युनिटी है एंड जो अर्बन ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस हैं उनका मानना ये है कि अगर आप 33% रिजर्वेशन सीट्स reservation women के लिए reserve कर दोगे seats, तो this would be leading to violation of the provisions of Article 371. So special provisions कुछ mentioned है under this article. So article states कि no act of the parliament would apply to the religious or social practices of Nagas, and Naga customary law also, and procedure, administration of the civil and criminal justice involving decisions according to the Naga customary law, and ownership and transfer of the land and its resources. So जो act of parliaments है, they are not applicable in all these areas as far as the Nagaland state is concerned. So Ho-Hos is the apex tribal body in Nagaland. They have pointed out that women, they have traditionally not been part of the decision-making bodies. So ये reason है of the opposition to these local body elections. So क्या पहले ऐसे polls हुए हैं या नहीं हुए हैं? So the first and the only civic body elections जो नागालैंड में हुए हैं, एक ही बार हुआ है, that was in 2004 without any reservation of seats for women. So तब कोई reservation नहीं थी तब भी, and the state government amended 2001 Municipal Act in 2006 so that reservation it becomes a part and it is implemented, and obviously 74th Amendment Act हमारे पास है ही, 1992 में it was passed. So तब ये like 2000 बेसिकली मतलब स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ने बाद में इस एक्ट को भी अमेंड कर दिया गया ताकि वुमेन को भी रिजर्वेशन प्रोवाइड किया जाए, बट देन ऑब्वियसली उसकी वजह से बहुत ज्यादा ऑपोजिशन हुआ बाय द अर्बन लोकल, बाय द लाइक कम्युनिटी बेस्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस अगेंस्ट दिस थिंग, एंड बेसिकली मतलब इसके बाद से जो सिविक बॉडी इलेक्शंस हैं वो हुए ही नहीं है. So what is going to be the way forward? So groups, the groups which are against this reservation for women, they want a guarantee कि 33% quota, it would not violate the provisions of Article 371A. So this is what they are demanding कि अगर 33% of the reservation women को दी भी जाती है, so it should not lead to violation the provisions of Article 371A. So before rushing the conduct the ULB elections, they suggest that duration of the reservation should be capped at 2 tenures and demanded that the post of chairperson should not be reserved for women. So kuch demands regarding reservation which are being raised. And 17th April ko Supreme Court pulled up the Nagaland government for adopting an ingenuous method of repealing this municipal act to evade the undertaking given to the court for holding the polls. So Supreme Court, obviously, it is taking cognizance of this issue, and जिस तरीके से इस एक्ट को रिपील किया गया, obviously Supreme Court has pulled up the Nagaland government on this thing. So Apex Court also noted कि nothing has so far emerged with respect to Article 371A to advance a plea that religious or social practices of Nagas or Naga customary law and the procedure, it denies the right of equality to women insofar as the participatory process is concerned in such elections. सो यमन से अगर हम देखें कि इन दिस कॉन्टेक्स्ट क्या लेटेस्ट डेवलपमेंट्स चल रही हैं इन यमन, सो ये हमने देखा था कि सऊदी अरेबिया एंड ईरान दे आर होल्डिंग टॉक्स सो एज टू ब्रिंग पीस एंड सीज फायर इन द यमन कंट्री, क्योंकि सिविल वॉर हैज बीन गोइंग ऑन देयर, जिसमें सऊदी अरेबिया और ईरान दोनों ऑपोजिट साइड्स पे थे. सो नाउ सिंस लाइक दे आर हैविंग गुड टाइज, उन्होंने अपने डिप्लोमेटिक रिलेशंस रिस्टोर कर लिए हैं, तो इसकी वजह से दे आर होल्डिंग बायलैटरल टॉक्स ताकि situation is eased in Yemen. So how did a prisoner swap come about between the two warring sides in Yemen? So recently अभी prisoner swap भी हुए हैं, and that's there. So एक Stockholm agreement हुआ है. So what is this? The warring parties in control of the parts of Yemen, they had signed this Stockholm agreement 2018 में, जहाँ पे they committed to freeing the conflict related detainees. So Yemen में ये जो war है ये start कैसे हुआ? So this conflict, it started in 2011 and this was as part of the Arab Spring protests जो इस region में बाकी countries में भी देखने को मिले हैं. So President Ali Abdullah Saleh was forced to hand over the power to his deputy, and he was Mr. Hadi. So Mr. Hadi, he found himself faced with an insurmountable task of tackling the Yemen's economic and security problems. So it was a challenge for him and the Houthis, which were backed by Iran. So Iran is supporting the Houthis, who took advantage of Mr. Hadi's weak control, and they captured the Sada province in the north. And then they also captured Sana'a, which is the capital of Yemen, in 2014. So जो Houthi rebels हैं, they are backed by Iran, and because जो successor था to the earlier president Ali Abdullah Saleh, who was like Mr. Hadi was the successor, so he was weak. जो economic insecurity से area से जो challenges थे, he was finding difficult to tackle with them. So इस situation का फायदा उठाया Houthi rebels ने, which are backed by Iran, and they basically firstly उन्होंने सादा province को capture किया जो northern Yemen में है. उसके बाद they also captured the capital of Yemen, which is Sana'a, in 2014. So the thought of Iran-backed Houthis in the control of Yemen, it bothered the neighboring Saudi Arabia due to its differences with Iran. So उस time पे Saudi Arabia and Iran के बीच में differences थे, and जो हम बोल सकते हैं vision था of the Houthi rebels. So neighboring countries, they did not find it, like they were not supporting that. So most obviously उसमें सबसे आगे Saudi Arabia ही था. So Saudi Arabia, then it led a coalition that included the Arab countries and sent troops to Yemen in 2015. So बाकी Arab countries and Saudi Arabia ने मिलके troops sent किए Yemen में. However, they were unable to oust the Houthis from Sana'a, but still they were not successful. So the war, it has continued since then, and it has only ceased once in April 2022, when the Houthis and the Saudi-led coalition, they announced a 2-month ceasefire ahead of Ramzan, and that's the holy month of Islam. So this was Yemen's first nationwide truce in 6 years. So 2011 से ये war चला आ रहा है. So definitely Yemen के ऊपर इसका impact होगा ही होगा. And according to UN, Yemen, it is now the largest humanitarian crisis in the world, जहाँ पे 80% of its population, it is dependent upon aid and protection. So you can imagine ki what would be the state of the people, the population, citizens in Yemen in today's times. So over 3 million people, they have been displaced from their homes since 2015. 3 million means 30 lakh. And public service sectors में से भी like healthcare, water, sanitation, education, या तो वो collapse हो गए हैं या they are in a dire situation. So economically also, Yemen, it is in trenches, and it has lost $90 billion in economic output, and more than 6 lakh people की jobs जा चुकी हैं, and more than half of the country's population is living in extreme poverty. More than half of the population. So ये अभी current situation है Yemen में. But let's see आने वाले time में if the war is ended या फिर ceasefire हो जाता है, तो डेफिनेटली चीजें आगे इम्प्रूव हो सकती हैं. तो कल गवर्नमेंट का व्यू हमने देखा था. गवर्नमेंट ने लीगलाइजेशन ऑफ सेम सेक्स मैरिज को बोला था कि इट इज एन अर्बन एलिटिस्ट मैटर, एंड दी ऑब्वियसली दी LGBTQ कम्युनिटी, दे आर सीइंग कि कैसे दिस इज एन अर्बन एलिटिस्ट मैटर. So among the 20 petitioners seeking legalization of the same-sex marriage by Supreme Court, a couple who say their lives, they are proof against the center's stance that the petition reflects urban elitist views. So they hail from a small town, North India mein, and they ask ki how their appeal to enjoy the same rights as the heterosexual citizens, it is urban, yeah, it is elitist. Kaise, basically they are raising the question against this. सो ये हमने कल भी देखा था. इट्स अ रिपीट. गवर्नमेंट का मानना ये है कि जो डिसीजन है रिगार्डिंग द लीगलाइजेशन ऑफ द सेम सेक्स यूनियन, लीव इट टू द पार्लियामेंट. वो पार्लियामेंट्री डोमेन में है, एंड क्योंकि लोगों ने अपने रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स इलेक्ट करके भेजे हैं, तो बेसिकली they are having the power to decide on this thing. So we are in charge. Supreme Court ने बोला है, responding to the argument by the Solicitor General that 5 brilliant individuals cannot make a decision for entire nation. So यहाँ पे भी कुछ हम बोल सकते हैं. We are seeing a tussle between the government and judiciary. So Supreme Court ने बोला है कि we are in the charge, and Solicitor General, who was speaking on behalf of the government, said कि only 5 brilliant individuals पूरी country के लिए decision नहीं ले सकते हैं, या कैसे लेंगे पूरी country के लिए, how can they only 5 people can decide. So Justice Sanjay Kaul ने बोला कि are you saying that you will not participate in the proceedings, and it does not look nice when you say the government will not participate. So obviously government participation भी important है and judiciary का भी important है. So marriage, it is a subject in the concurrent list of the constitution. So we cannot have one state opposing the same-sex marriage and another legalizing in favor of it. So every state, they have separate rules under the Special Marriage Act or the Hindu Marriage Act. And so let the parliament consider and decide this issue. This was the government's view, which was submitted. So Saudi Arabia के जो minister है, he meets Assad in the first visit to Syria since the start of the civil war. So Syria में भी एक civil war चल रहा है, and this is the first meeting between the two officials from Syria and Saudi Arabia. So Sudan's capital hit by blast as conflict enters the 4th day. So Sudan maybe we are seeing clashes. So this region, it is like very vulnerable, and मतलब बहुत सारी countries में this the protest and attacks they are going on. So हमें geography इस area की बहुत important हो जाती है, and वैसे भी पहले भी इस area से बहुत ज़्यादा map based questions पूछे गए हैं. So आज के टाइम में it is again बहुत ही important है. So Mount Annapurna, it is in Nepal. So Indian climbers को यहाँ से rescue किया गया है. So और हमें पता होना चाहिए और कौन सी important peaks हैं. So India, China, they snap up the Russian oil in April above the price cap. So जो price cap impose की गई है उससे ज़्यादा पे the two countries, they are buying the crude oil from Russia. So India, it has accounted for more than 70% of the seaborne supplies of Urals grade so far this month, and China for about 20%. So average discounts दिए गए that were around $13 per barrel. सो जो इकोनॉमिक सैंक्शंस लगाए गए थे बाय द वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड, हमने देखा कि वो सक्सेसफुल नहीं हुए. रादर वी कैन से कि उसके बाद रशिया का रेवेन्यू और ज्यादा इंक्रीज हो गया है. तो जो सैंक्शंस लगाए गए उनका तो कोई फायदा ही नहीं हुआ. And India and China, they have not agreed to abide by the just G7 price cap, and that's why we are buying the crude oil up at a level, at a price above that price cap, जो कि थी around $60 per barrel की. And so that's the thing. So India plans to appeal against this WTO ruling on the IT tariff. So हमने कल देखा था कि IT imports के लिए जो टैरिफ इम्पोज किए गए थे, इट वाज कंप्लेंट यूरोपियन यूनियन था एंड बाकी कंट्रीज थी WTO में जिन्होंने कंप्लेंट की थी अगेंस्ट इंडिया, एंड WTO वाज लाइक फेवर्ड them only, इंडिया के अगेंस्ट रूलिंग थी, तो इंडिया वुड बी अपीलिंग इट. So WTO ने बोला कि इंडिया it has violated global trading rules by imposing tariffs on some IT products जो कि import किए जाते हैं by India. So Tim Cook has opened the Apple's first India store in Mumbai. And you can see in this picture that Apple CEO Tim Cook reacts after seeing an old Macintosh classic machine, which was brought by a visitor during the opening of the first Apple Inc. flagship store in India at Bandra Kurla complex. So tea mosquito bug, it is affecting the production. So it is affecting tea production in both low and high elevation plantations. So several pesticides, they were removed from the approved list of the Plant Protection Code of the Tea Board to make Indian teas free from the harmful pesticides. So क्योंकि pesticides बहुत limited है, the choice that the farmers have that is very limited, so उसकी वजह से they are facing challenge in tackling this bug, this tea mosquito bug.